Well, here in London, today marks the start of LME Week. The annual event sees thousands of miners, refiners and traders gather for talks on metal markets and supply contracts. Our next guest is a speaker at the event. Jason Schenker is President of Prestige Economics. He's got a few lined up for later today, but thank you for making the time with us this morning before of that. And I really wanted to get that tension that we're seeing in commodities market, because you've got the push of geopolitical tension, you've got economic stimulus driving things higher, but then of course you've got concerns about global growth, you've got of course China. Will it have a considerable slowdown? Where do you stand in this tension?
Well, you know, I think there are three basic things that I'm focused on that drive prices. One is this global growth story. Two is the story for the dollar. And the third thing is what's going on with supply and inventories. You know, at the end of the day, if we look at growth, which is really the most important thing, right now we're probably kind of near a bottom, right? The IMF just lowered their numbers last week, which doesn't make growth go slower. It's just the acceptance of the fact that the current rate of growth is slower than they had previously been forecasting. You have all the stimulus that's out there from the U.S. You have the likely implementation in some form of the OMT from the European Union. You've seen the Bank of England, the Bank of Japan. They've implemented different forms of quantitative easing. And just last week, you saw the central banks of Brazil and South Korea cut their interest rates. There is so much stimulus and accommodative monetary policy out there right now that we're really very likely near a bottom with growth, which means next year's growth is going to be stronger than this year. Might not be a blowout year, but if it's just a little better, that means that you're going to see increases in global demand growth for a number of industrial metals.
We've got the likes of Alcoa, aluminium producer, just last week warning about China's demand waning. That really did force a lot of the miners lower that particular day. What about China? What about its quarterly growth?
Well, you know, I've been forecasting all year that China would see the slowest rate of growth in over a decade this year. That's what we're seeing. Next year's growth in China is going to be a little bit better. But the story with China is China's the factory that makes the stuff that Europe and the United States buys. If Europe and the United States, you know, and by Europe I mean both the European Union, the Eurozone and England, if we're all seeing slow growth together, that's really weighing on Chinese, the demand for their output, for their goods. If none of us are buying their stuff, then of course their growth is weak. You can't engender endemic demand there. You need growth in the U.S., in the U.K., and in the Eurozone to really improve in order to see Chinese growth get better. You will see those areas of growth better next year than this year, and that's going to improve some of that demand from China and Chinese growth.
So which particular industrial metals should we be in if we want to catch that slight upswing that you were expecting next week?
I really think as we look next year, I think most bullish is copper. If you look over the past year, you've seen a big price drop at the same time that the LME inventories over the last 12 months have fallen by over 50%. When supply falls, when prices drop, it means people are buying in the dips. That's real upside price risk. There's also some upside for tin. There's less upside for aluminum, and nickel is a much less bullish story. All of these are likely to move a little bit higher. Magnitude, though, copper looking for new average high prices. For COMEX prices, what I forecast, $4.05 a pound is the average for next year.
So copper and tin, the ones to be looking out for the time being.
That's what I think.
It's been brilliant to have you on the show. Jason Schenker, President of Prestige Economics. Hope all your talks on the LME go well later today.